Today with us, we have an EMAT member. I'm very excited. Her name is Brenda Jackson Darling, and she's going to share all about being diagnosed with her chronic kidney disease, her transplant experience, dialysis. There's just so much for her to share. Let's welcome Brenda.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. This is an honor for me, being an EMAT member, to be able to share with you all my experience as a dialysis patient, former transplant patient, and I'm just happy to be here.
All right, Brenda, well, let's get started. Now, what everybody does not know is that you are a retired nurse, but at one time you did work in a dialysis center. Share with us that experience.
That is correct. I've been a nurse for 30 years. I was licensed in 1980, but I started my career as a graduate nurse in the hospital. And shortly after that, I transferred to work in a dialysis unit, an outpatient dialysis unit. And I worked there for almost 10 years. That was a very humbling experience, seeing patients come in with renal failure, end-stage renal failure, having to do a renal replacement, and their form was hemodialysis. I worked in an outpatient hemodialysis clinic. I would see people come in and their course of treatment, it wasn't a very pleasant situation to me. But what was most striking to me is that I saw most of these patients not get better. It was something where this was like a life sentence for them. And it's very rare during those days to see a patient that was going for a kidney transplant. So it was, like I said, a very humbling experience, and knowing that this was pretty much the rest of their life for these people. And so I often remember saying to myself, if this was something that I had to do at that time, never even imagining my wildest dreams that I would be there one day, how would I feel had this been myself, coming into a dialysis clinic 3 times a week to save my life?
When did you find out that you had kidney disease?
I learned that I had what was diagnosed at that time, renal insufficiency, after my youngest son was born. About 6 months after that, I went in for routine lab work, and my results came back that my kidney function was slightly decreased. And I went to a doctor who referred me to a kidney specialist. In the course of us trying to determine how I got to that point, we came to realize that in my 20s, I had a series of kidney infections. And in those days, you were treated as an outpatient. They put you in the hospital. As a form of diagnosing and treating the kidney infections, they used to do a procedure called an IVP, intravenous pyelogram, where they would inject dye into the kidney to diagnose what was really going on. Had no idea at that time that that dye was very caustic to the kidneys. So in the process of diagnosing, they were actually insulting my kidney at the same time. After a series of those happening, and I was preeclamptic with my youngest son, and I had a hypertensive crisis, my blood pressure went up very, very high. It damaged the nephrons in my kidneys, the small filtering units of the kidney. At that time, 6 months after Brandon was born, is when I was diagnosed with renal insufficiency. After having that for almost 20 years, and I was able to manage it with diet and keeping my blood pressure under control. I saw my doctor, I think that was in 1991. In 1994, he told me within a year I would need dialysis. At that point is when I sought out kidney transplant. What I needed to do, what was the process to go about to receive a kidney transplant. At that time, they referred me to Shands Hospital to be listed on their transplant list. Well, uh, no one in my family was a match, no one at all. So that just kind of went on the back burner. But I was very blessed that in the sense that even being diagnosed with renal insufficiency for about 20, 24 years, I still had a couple years left of my existing kidney function. So I was distraught thinking that no one was going to be a match in my family. But I had a really good friend, and she called me one day and she said, I have two kidneys. If one is a match, it's yours. And that was a miracle. It really was, because I'd been told, because of a number of antibodies that I have in my blood, out of 100 people in the general population, I was only matched with 22. I was 88% sensitized. And my girlfriend, she was a match. And so that was a miracle, you know. And so we actually scheduled to have the surgery done in December of 2010. For some reason, only God, I say it's God, because I put the surgery off. I canceled the surgery and everything, and people didn't understand what I was doing or why I was doing it. But I just didn't feel within me, my spirit just didn't let me believe that it was time yet. Well, we canceled the surgery. I went for 2 years without having to have dialysis or a transplant. In April of 2012, I was working at the time, and I just started feeling sicker and sicker and sicker. It took all I had just to get home from a day's work, make it to my sofa or bed, and that was it. I started having symptoms, of kidney failure, the nausea, the no appetite, the fatigue. All of those things began to come down on me. And so we rescheduled the surgery, and I was successfully transplanted in June 2012. Um, that transplant lasted for 8 years, which is not really the extent of what a transplant should last. But I was plagued with infections that required me to have intravenous antibiotics very frequently. I was hospitalized probably every 4 to 6 weeks for antibiotics with infections, urinary tract infection. What I was told is um, your new kidney is placed in the front of your abdomen, and it's very close to your bladder. My bladder was refluxing urine back into my transplanted kidney, and that's what caused the infections. Yes, because in normal anatomy, your kidneys are up and behind your back, in your back, and you have a very long ureter, the tube that takes the urine from the kidney into the bladder. Because of my new anatomy, my kidney now being in the front, my ureter was very, very short. So it was very close to my bladder. And any urine that I had that was retained in my bladder reflux over into my kidney, giving me infections. I dealt with that for, well, up until about a year ago. But because of the medications that I had to have being metabolized through the kidney, many of them, it caused my new transplant to fail before the recommended time that it should have. When it did that, I was put on peritoneal dialysis. Peritoneal dialysis is when a tube is inserted through your abdomen, and it uses the lining of your abdomen, the peritoneum, as a dialyzing vehicle. And that was something I did for about 3 years. With peritoneal dialysis, it's all automated. And for me, I did mine at night. So I was on the dialysis machine for 10 hours a night, 7 days a week. And that was my life for the past 3 years, those 3 years. Well, I had to have a surgery, an abdominal surgery, and it required going into my abdomen, and that caused them to have to take that tube out for the peritoneal dialysis. I had to transition to hemodialysis. That's when the blood, most people are familiar with using your blood, and people go to the center 3 times a week for their dialysis treatments. I was fortunate enough to have my son and his willingness to be my care partner, that I was able to do dialysis at home. So we had the whole very much set up just like in a clinic, the machine, the chair, blood tubes, everything that you would need for a treatment. We did it right here in my home. I designated my bedroom a bedroom for my treatment room. So we converted that. 4 times a week, I did dialysis at home for 3 hours a day. They have to do a minimum of 12 dialysis hours per week to be able for it to be sufficient and efficient enough to replace your kidneys. Of course, nothing would ever replace your normal kidney function, but that's the minimum amount of hours required on a machine to replace your kidney function. So I did that for about 2 years until circumstances required me to have to go to the clinic. So now I go to a dialysis clinic 3 times a week. I go Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I'm there at 5:30 in the morning, and my treatment time lasts for 3 hours and 45 minutes. So it's very tiring. I found that going to the center has not been as gentle on my body as the machine I had at home doing my personal dialysis. An in-center treatment requires a more aggressive filtration system because you're dialyzing, a number of people at one time versus a machine that's going to dialyze one person. So you're on a system that's it can't be personalized because you're dialyzing everyone with different diagnoses, different causes of renal failure. Their treatment times may be different, but you have to be there in the general population with everyone else. So I do that. I do that now, and it's been very challenging because I found that doing those treatments in the center, once I'm done, that's it. I'm done for the day. And oftentimes the day after, which is your recovery day, because you're right back again the day after. So my quality of life has gone down dramatically in the sense that things that I was doing prior to going in center, I don't have the energy or really the desire to do it anymore because I'm exhausted all the time. And with hemodialysis, your diet is much more restricted compared to when I was on peritoneal dialyzing every day. So you have this high, so to speak, where you're coming off dialysis, your blood is cleansed, the toxins and fluids have been removed, and then the next day, you try to recover, but the following day you're right back there again. So it's never really any break, never any a break. But yet and still, I'm thankful. It's a second chance at life for me. So I'm grateful that I have this time and this capability of sustaining my life while I'm waiting for another transplant. I'm currently listed for a new kidney with Advent Health in Orlando, and I was listed there in February of this year. And since February, I've gotten 3 calls, and they've all been, uh, I call them dry runs. They allow me to get prepared or whatever, to go for this kidney. But circumstances had it such that I was a virtual match on paper, but when they got my blood and put it with the donor's blood, I had 1 or 2 antibodies that weren't compatible. So I missed those kidney offers. Most recently was an offer I had last Sunday, right at the height of this hurricane, this tropical storm Debbie slash hurricane that we had. And I was told to be in Orlando at 9 o'clock Monday morning. So I'm prepared, backpack, car full of gas, and I hit the road to Orlando. I get a call to say, your donor was in New Mexico. They missed the flight from New Mexico to the connecting flight to come to Orlando. But come on anyway, we'll get you ready, get you prepped and things like that in case you need dialysis or whatever. So I continue on my journey. Well, about 20 minutes after that, I get another call and they said, you can turn around and go back home. Turn around and go back home because all incoming flights to Orlando have been canceled. So I'll never forget Hurricane Tropical Storm Debbie because she kind of robbed me of a kidney. So that's where I was, and that's where I am now. So I anxiously await another call and believing that call is going to be it.
That just sounds like a lot.
Shirley, I spend my life trying to stay alive. That's my life. That is my life, just trying to stay alive. And I'm very fortunate, I believe, with my experience of being a nurse and a former dialysis nurse, that I've been able to maintain where I'm at because you're constantly vigilant. Is it okay to eat this, or how much weight have I gained, fluid weight I've gained. Um, that's how they determine your treatment, how much you take off for your treatment, because they monitor your weight. Okay. One of the water bottles that we everyone is familiar with, that's 500 mLs. That's equal to 1 pound. So if I were to drink 4 of those, that means between treatments I put on 4 pounds of fluid. And the more fluid you have on, the more aggressive your treatment has to be on your body, on your heart, everything. So you can't eat, you can't drink the way that you're accustomed to or had been in the past. You're constantly monitoring, if I eat this or if I drink this, how much food is going to put on me. And if your diet includes anything with salt in it, that's that's hidden weight, because anytime you have a high sodium diet or eat anything with salt in it, it puts fluid on you. People may be familiar with cardiac patients who have to limit their fluid and their sodium because of the weight gain they receive by eating and drinking. It's not like the type of weight you gain when you just eat food. This is strictly and primarily weight gain from your fluid intake. And the more you drink, the more weight you have on, and the more they have to try to pull off of you when you go do your dialysis treatments.
That's a lot.
Yes, ma'am, it is. It is. But I'm still here.
And that's the blessing.
Yes,
And we know
absolutely.
that that kidney is on the way.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
for your first transplant, I know you received from a living donor. You're listed again, and once again, you're looking for a living donor. Here's some of the
And
things that I've heard from those who are on the list. It is so difficult to find a living donor. Tell us some of the things that you're doing currently in order to solicit someone to donate a kidney for you.
right. Asking for a kidney is not like asking to borrow, $2 or a cup of sugar. You're asking for someone to give up a part of their body for you. And like I said, I've gone through the list in my family, and unfortunately, no one in my family is a match. So I would have to be dependent on someone out of the kindness of their heart that would be selfless enough to offer me the gift of life. Uh, Things that I'm doing to promote the awareness of my need for a kidney is through EMAT, of course. The wide range reach that that organization has as far as making their members and persons in need of a kidney visible. Being a part of EMAT has been a blessing to me. Other things that I'm doing, I have car magnets on my door that says I'm looking for a living kidney donor. I'm O positive, and it has my phone number there. I have T-shirts. My family has T-shirts that say the same thing. My mom's looking for a living kidney donor. My sister's looking for a living kidney donor. And then we have flyers, um, business cards that we put out, wherever we go, and just to make people aware of what my need is, and this is what I need to live.
A lot of things that I run into with people who talk about they need a living donor. I think if this is the case, you do not have room to be shy because you never know where that donor may be. I know it has to be a difficult ask, but
Mhm.
you have to just keep it out there. And I think the more we talk about it, it's one thing that's kind of taboo. And as a result, you're familiar with all the myths and misconceptions we have. And especially during this time, National Minority Donor Awareness Month. But anytime is a good time to have that conversation because the more we talk about it, I think the more people would be at ease. Even if you don't want to be an organ donor, at least be educated about the difference that it makes. Because people still think that if something happens to me and I have to call the emergency services or something like that, they're not going to try to save my life. And we just hear these, I don't want to say excuses because some of them are legitimate reasons and we understand that, but we're talking about the life of another human. And I think another misinterpretation that people have is, well, if you need a living donor, then get one of your children to do it. Get your grandchild. But they don't understand that a lot of times, like you just said, family members are not matches.
Hmm.
You would
Hmm.
think that they would be, but a lot of times they are not. I've heard it time and time again. No one in my family, unless you are a twin, I think the odds are reduced and I think it works
Right.
for them.
Hmm.
But other than that, there's no guarantee
No
that your
guarantee.
family members will match.
Hmm. I have two sons, and I'm O positive, and both of them have their father's blood type, which is A negative, I believe it is. So that knocks them out right there. Uh, but yes, it is a very, very challenging thing. And I was fortunate with my friend, and it was just a conversation that she even found out that I needed a kidney. She was working as a school nurse, and my son was working as a substitute teacher at the local high school here. And we've been friends, for a while. We were nurses together. Both of our youngest sons went all through school together. They were best friends. But when they graduated, we kind of, fell out of touch with each other. So she saw Alton at the school and had a conversation, how's your mom doing? And he was like, well, she's not doing well. This is what's going on. She's been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease and she's in need of a kidney transplant or will need dialysis very soon. And she told me later on that, at that point, God just spoke to her, give Brenda a kidney. And she spoke with her husband about it. They had conversations and she called me and she's like, you know, girlfriend, I've got two. If I'm a match, one is yours. And she's Caucasian. So people often think that you have to be in the same race to be able to give someone a kidney, which is not true. Another myth. Um, but yeah, she was a match, and we had a successful transplant, and she's doing well with the one kidney. And had the circumstances not been such with my infections, I do believe I would still have that kidney today. Uh, we named our kidney Ruth, after Ruth in the Bible. Where you go, I go. Your people would be my people, and your God would be my God. So Ruth hung in there as long as she could, for as long as she could. And when she finally just gave out, she just gave out. A hard part for me, believe it or not, Shirley, was having to tell my friend that I needed to go on dialysis and the kidney was failing because somewhere inside of me felt as if I was letting her down, so to speak, because I have her kidney, and now it's not doing what it was supposed to do. So, she reassured me that, she did what God told her to do. It did its job for as long as it could do it. And now, thankfully, there is another recourse that you can go to until another transplant becomes available. So, all the calls that I have received for kidney offers have been deceased donor kidneys for whatever reason. Those persons life was coming to an end, and in their thoughtfulness before they passed, or their family members being approached by someone, a kidney transplant coordinator, they were willing to say yes, to give the gift of life to someone else. And it's not just kidneys, it could be lungs, it could be heart, it could be connective tissue, corneas. People have regained their sight because of corneal transplant. So, just one person being a organ donor, I believe that the number is maybe up to 125 people could receive a gift of life from one donor. So those are amazing statistics.
Absolutely, because I know I'm grateful for a deceased donor who left me my lungs. and
Mm-hmm.
they have lasted for 16 plus years. So it's really important that we understand the difference that organ donation makes. Living donation is not for everyone, and neither is deceased donation. But like I said, we want people to be educated about it. And that's why we're doing videos and sharing stories and letting people know the truth
Yes,
about organ donation and how it actually saves lives. Share
absolutely.
a little about your dialysis experience now. I know we were talking about the difference in a fistula and also the graft, which is the way that you receive your dialysis. Explain that to our listeners, please.
Okay, certainly. A fistula is when you take a person's a native vein and an artery, and you put those together to create what's called a fistula. Within that fistula, it has once it's matured, and that can take somewhere from 2 to 4 months to mature. They have an active blood flow within that fistula that would allow for dialysis. Uh, Dialysis, you have a system where you have one part of it that takes the blood out of your body, goes into the machine. Once your blood is cleansed and all the fluid is removed, then another tube brings it back into to your body. So for me, I was not able to have a fistula because my veins were not able to accommodate that. So I had what was called an AV graft, arterial venous graft, put into my arm. And it is a tubing, artificial tubing that's put in your arm. Could be your arm, your leg. I've seen them even in the chest. But what that does is create a an artificial means of having your blood taken out and brought back in. Needles are inserted into the graft or the fistula, one to take the blood out and one to bring the blood in. And all of us are familiar with getting injections or seeing needles for an IV or something like that. These needles are probably 3 times the size of that, of those needles. It's painful. It's very painful. I'm not going to tell you any different. It's painful. And this is something you're subjected to 3 times a week or more. Uh, but with me, after my graft was put in, I had complications with that. And I had to have, and many people have these, they're called CVC catheters, central venous catheter. They are placed in your chest, and what would normally be the venous and the arterial side and a graft or a fistula, it's now a tube with two ports that goes into your chest. Externally, there are, I'm going to show this to you all just so you get an idea of what it is like. This is the venous side, arterial side. It takes blood out of your body into the machine. And this is done over a period of 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours. It goes to the machine. There's an artificial kidney in the machine, and it involves maybe, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of very minuscule looking tubes that your blood goes through. The dialysate solution bathes those tubes, and that's what pulls off the fluid and the toxins through what's called osmosis. Um, and then once all that's done, then it comes back into the venous side. And this is a constant thing over and over and over and over for, I see you turn your head, Shirley, for, the length of your dialysis treatment. People often have complications with this. I had my first one for over 2 years, over 2 years. And they don't want you to keep it that long because this tube, the end of it goes right into your subclavian vein of your heart. So it's always a chance of infection. Um, if the tubes or whatever gets cut or the caps come off, you could bleed to death. So there are very, major complications associated with this. So they don't like you to keep them for very long. But, some people have them all the time because they aren't able to have a fistula, or for whatever reason their graft doesn't operate function properly. And that was my case. So right now, excuse me, I have this until transplant, or I can get my peritoneal catheter put back in, or a new graft. So those are the three forms of dialysis. Well, renal replacement, I should say, is peritoneal dialysis, hemodialysis, or transplant. And I've had the experience of having had all three. So I'm unique in that way because you don't often find people who have done all of it. So I've done everything.
All righty. Let me pull myself. Everybody who knows me knows I am not a blood person. Yeah, I had to turn my head just the thought
Yes.
of what you were saying. Even when I go in for labs and they just take the blood out of my arm, I turn my head because I don't want to see that. So
Mhm.
what got me is when you said it was 3 times. That's just like I said, everyone I talk to, no one has shared that there's anything pleasant about
Mhm.
being in that dialysis chair. So certainly we want to promote prevention, just
Mhm.
getting to that point where you need it, because we know the two major causes of renal failure is diabetes and high blood pressure. And a lot of times, when you don't get that checkup,
Mhm.
you're sitting there and you're not even aware that you have problems. So there are things that we can do. Several people have said when you go in and get your checkup, make sure you get information on those numbers. The A1C, what's the other one that everybody should know? The EGFR. You should know those. Ask your primary care
Mhm.
physician or whoever, so you will not be sitting with kidney problems and you are not aware, because a lot
Where?
of times you don't find out until the last minute, and at that
Right.
point it's too late.
Mhm. I can remember as a dialysis nurse being on call, called in to initiate a dialysis treatment. And I can't tell you the number of people who told me, I didn't know I was in renal failure until I was in the emergency room. I've had a headache for days and days and days. So I went and didn't even realize they had high blood pressure. But in those cases, they were diagnosed and had to be treated immediately, urgently, from the emergency room. And, that was it. That was it. And I'm seeing, in my experience, and now that I'm in the dialysis center, more and more young people. They're getting younger and younger. It's not that we just have to chalk it up to age or something like that, what causes you to have a diagnosis such as this. Um, we're seeing that our children are overweight more and more and more, and that can put them into early juvenile diabetes, and from that point, their kidneys can fail. So we have to be very aware. We have to make the public aware of oftentimes this disease is preventable, especially if it's from high blood pressure. If you maintain your diet, your exercise, your weight, keep your blood pressure under control, this doesn't have to be your sentence. And even with diabetes, making sure your A1C, what you mentioned, is within range. Um, those are things that we can do on our part to make sure that we're involved in with our care, make sure we understand and know what our numbers are, what they mean, and what we can do to keep within a normal range and prevent something like this happening. In my case, it wasn't so much that I had control of it because of my infections early on, and then being preeclamptic in my pregnancy, and it damaged the filtering, the nephrons of my kidney. Those are the filtering units. Um, and that's what happened to me. But thankfully, I was able to stave it off for as long as I did. And, I'm at this point where I'm at now.
Well, we certainly join together in prayers that that living donor, deceased donor, and of course, we are grateful for people who make the decision before they pass on to leave that gift of life for someone. That's an important decision. When you renew your license, or
Mm.
even if you just want to sign up online, make a decision, have the conversation. And before we close out, is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Yes, I would, Shirley. And it touched on what you just mentioned is that we have to make organ donation awareness as visible as we can and to educate as many people as we can on this and to encourage them to be organ donors, to register for organ donation. And there again, oftentimes it requires to have those hard conversations, with your family that this is what you desire, but it's absolutely necessary because just that one conversation, all it takes is one. Just one yes makes it possible for someone to receive the gift of life. So, education, awareness, I think, are paramount for us to be able, especially in our African American community, because we have the highest need for kidneys and the lowest supply. So, it's very important for us to get the word out that someone just can make a difference. One person can make the difference. And so that's what I'm believing. That's what I've been praying for. And I've already seen the manifestation of it with 3 calls. And I'm believing the next one will be it. Thank you for having me, Shirley.
And know that that kidney is on the way for you. We appreciate you and thank you for sharing with educating minorities about transplants.
My
Goodbye.
pleasure. Bye bye. Thank you.